Lu glanced at the fruit knife not far from him. Because it was just used to divide the food, there were still some blood stains on it. The distance between him and the fruit knife was only 2 steps, but at this moment, after thinking twice, he tightened the ceramic water cup in his hand, clenched his teeth, and was ready to go. The bonfire in the tree hole was gently blown by the autumn wind, the flames floated, and the 2 shadows on the wall also twisted. A ball the size of a human head floated not far from Lu, and a rather viscous, disgusting black mist overflowed from its pitch-black body. Lu didn't find the creature's eyes, but he could clearly feel that the pitch-black monster in front of him was looking at him. After the surging black fog, it seemed that a large number of eyes might be opened at any time, swallowing the sight that Lu cast in the past. Lu didn't know what this mass of black fog was. Shortly after he went out to collect resources for the winter and returned to the tree hole, this strange group of things followed him and floated into the tree hole. Lu had seen too many things that he couldn't understand during this time, and the appearance of the black mist once again expanded Lu's cognitive boundaries. What should I do? This kind of monster, which is obviously beyond the scope of cognition, is extremely strange, and is not very easy to mess with, is in the same room with you, and being prepared to resist should be the only option. As for why they didn't communicate, Lu was sure that he didn't understand the language of the other party. Not long ago, he saw a group of soldiers wearing steel armor cruising in the forest from a distance. The language they used was different from any language Lu knew. Thinking of this, Lu squeezed the ceramic water cup even tighter. Although it's not as deadly as a fruit knife, it's better at hand. I just don't know if the black mist-shrouded monster in front of me has flesh and blood, and it bleeds and hurts. All of a sudden, several tentacles stretched out from the black mist and stabbed straight into the ground. Lu's tense nerves were mobilized, and with a single stride, he rushed in front of the black mist, the water glass in his hand raised high. At the moment when the water glass was about to fall heavily, Lu was alert to the tentacles coming from behind and out of the corner of his eyes. He saw the pattern that the tentacles drew on the ground. I can't hold it back! Lu secretly screamed badly. Seeing that it was about to hit the black mist hard, 2 tentacles wrapped around Lu's wrist, and it shook violently, causing his palm to loosen, and the cup also fell to the ground. At this time, the black mist had drifted away for a certain distance. Lu recovered from the shock and saw the speed at which the black fog evaded and the flexibility of his tentacles, and knew that he basically had no chance of winning if he wanted to be tough. But this guy is using tentacles to draw patterns. Is this an application for communication? Lu covered his hand that had been tossed, and found that it was not corroded. After recalling a few paragraphs of mathematical formulas, I found that there was no sign of blurred memory. Of course, he also felt that if the real person could influence his thoughts, then no matter how he checked, it might be difficult to find out. Under suspicion, he slowly stepped back, and quickly lowered his head to glance at the traces left by the tentacles on the ground. Not some complicated characters, but a pattern of lips with an arrow. The location pointed by the arrow is exactly the squirrel that Lu roasted on the bonfire. Between the light and flint, Lu understood something. He held up the squirrel that had not been baked on the shelf and asked cautiously, "Do you want to eat it?" The spherical black mist floating in midair was motionless. Lu remembered the language barrier, and immediately found a branch, added an arrow next to the lips drawn by the tentacle, and placed the squirrel on the arrow. Black mist moved. It seemed that it was worried that Lu misunderstood something. It first rolled up the water cup on the ground with its tentacles and handed it to Lu. Then, he rolled up the knife that was on the side, pointed the blade to himself, and handed it to Lu. Lu took these 2 things in a daze, and most of the vigilance in his heart disappeared. Hei-Wu's outstretched tentacle tapped the squirrel a few times. Seeing that Lu didn't say anything, he tapped it again eagerly. Looking at this urgent action, Lu suddenly realized, and stretched out his hand, "You can." Before he finished speaking, Lu smiled helplessly, and he forgot that he couldn't understand the language with the other party again. He picked up the piece of squirrel meat and handed it to Heiwu himself. After the black mist wrapped around his tentacles, he actually followed Lu's example, put it on with a wooden stick, and put it on the bonfire to bake again. Could it be that this guy also likes to eat cooked food? Lu thought this idea was absurd. In his opinion, it fits his shape only after taking it and dismantling it directly, instead of constantly turning the squirrel meat with his tentacles like a barbecue master, roasting it fully cooked and then eating it. Although he still didn't dare to reveal his back to this strange black mist, but after confirming that the other party was a creature that could communicate, Lu was able to breathe a sigh of relief. When people's psychological expectations for what they encounter are very low, death is not too scary. Lu wanted to resist just now, but he didn't want to be too useless to die. After all, it's been almost a month since he passed by, and he's been very aggrieved all the time. Now the other party is acting like an intelligent creature, which also gives some comfort to Lu, who has not spoken to anyone for a long time and can only talk to himself to maintain his language ability. He picked up the knife and fiddled with it for a long time. He took care of the other prey caught in the trap this afternoon and put it on the bonfire. Seeing Heiwu's tentacles reaching out to take over the string in his hand, Lu hesitated for a while, and decided to try to reason. He pointed to the squirrel that Black Mist was roasting, indicating that it belonged to him. Then I put the one in my hand into my arms. The tentacles still stretched out, taking advantage of the moment Lu was about to make a gesture, swept away the squirrel meat. Lu looked at Heiwu's two tentacles flipping the two pieces of squirrel meat. He wanted to say something, but he held back. The smell of meat wafting in the air made Lu drool. He sighed, dug out the winter food he had found in the squirrel's nest, peeled a few pine nuts and put them in his mouth, chewing them carefully. During this period of time, Lu had very little time to eat, and most of the time he was hungry. He still remembered that when he successfully hunted for the first time, because of excessive hunger, he even had the urge to drink blood. During the most difficult period, Lu relied on a big white wolf as tall as one person. This white wolf is always a waste of food. After eating up the abdomen of its prey, it will be discarded in other places. Lu played the role of a hyena. Every time he encountered the food that the white wolf couldn't finish, he would patiently divide it with a knife and take it back to the tree hole where he lived. But the good times didn't last long. The white wolf seemed to have left the nearby area recently, so that Lu, who was so happy as a hyena, had no food source. Today, I finally caught a bit of meat and fish, but I didn't expect to be robbed by someone entering the house. However, Lu was not very angry, because he hadn't been with other creatures for a long time. He misses the white wolf very much. Although the white wolf looks at him like garbage every time, but every time Lu and the white wolf look at each other, he will feel very peaceful. Now this black fog suddenly broke into his tree hole, although it was a little unexpected, but it was considered that there was a fresh life accompanying him. The rich meat aroma penetrated Lu's nose. He turned his head and his cheeks were hot. The roasted squirrel meat was pushed in front of him by the tentacles. Looking at the black mist that was still roasting another bunch of squirrel meat, Lu looked at the bunch in front of him, stunned for a while, then pointed at himself blankly. Tentacle drew an arrow on the ground, pointing directly at Lu. Taking the squirrel meat, Lu took a big bite without hesitation, chewing and thanking him, completely forgetting that this squirrel was his own trophy. After a while, another bunch of squirrel meat was about to be cooked. Lu stared at the black mist and wanted to know how it would eat the meat. Anyway, Lu has yet to find where its mouth is. The tentacles rolled up the meat skewers, and then, the black mist surged. Lu couldn't see the movement clearly, and the meat pieces on the wooden stick were gone. Ah! What was this eaten with? Hey! I finally don't have to eat raw meat anymore. Before Lu could think clearly about this question, a strange voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Sounds like a girl, she can understand the language herself, but who is this talking? Luu raised his head in horror, looked at the black mist not far away, and an absurd guess emerged spontaneously. The voice in Luu's mind stopped abruptly, and the black mist floating in the air slowly turned. Undoubtedly, He Wu also noticed something abnormal from Luu's reaction. Feeling the sight penetrating through the black fog, Luu swallowed subconsciously and couldn't help but move back. The figure of He Wu suddenly became blurred in Luu's sight. Before Luu could react, several tentacles sticking out from the twisted mist slammed him to the ground. The core of the sphere overflowing with black air was about to touch the tip of Luu's nose. Even at such a close distance, Luu couldn't find the mouth or eyes of this thing. He was also surprised that under such circumstances, his first reaction was to look for these two things. "You can hear me, right?" The melodious female voice suddenly raised her tone, revealing uncontrollable joy in her anxiety. Luu felt very bad. He was shoved to the ground. If he hadn't immediately covered his head, he would probably have passed out by now. It wasn't a good thing that he didn't go into a coma. Luu's vision was completely obscured by the black mist. At this moment, the female voice kept exploding in Luu's mind, like two loudspeakers sticking to his ears. Now it can be confirmed that it is this ball shrouded in black mist that is talking to himself. Resisting the headache, Luu roared and shut up, but the black fog seemed to have not heard it, repeating the same sentence like a repeater. The high-pitched voice that kept reverberating in his mind finally made Luu give up his resistance. As soon as his eyes darkened, he lost consciousness. After Luu passed out, He Wu's tentacles stopped moving. She murmured in confusion in a voice that only she could hear. "How could anyone still hear my voice?" When Luu woke up again, he was in the tree hole, like when he fell asleep on the first day, he fell into the innermost tree hole. He touched his body, checked whether his body was intact, and immediately saw the black fog in the tree hole. The cold wind whistled outside the tree hole, and from time to time cold winds penetrated into the tree hole, causing Luu to shiver. There was already a thin layer of snow on the ground, and the dead leaves were whitened by the snow. Looking at the time, it seemed like a whole night had passed, but I didn't expect it to start snowing, which made Luu a little worried about whether he would be able to survive this winter. He Wu also noticed that Luu was awake, and it slowly floated up from the ground. Luu Sheng was afraid that the black fog would be as excited as before, so he quickly stretched out his hand to stop it from drifting towards him. It is forbidden to be a repeater, and it is forbidden to speak loudly. It would be fine if he fell into a coma. Yesterday, he was completely stunned by the sound of the black mist. "You can hear me, right?" The female voice sounded again, this time much softer. Luu nodded, then asked back, "Who are you? Why do you speak my language?" An embarrassing silence descended, and the black mist put away its tentacles and slowly floated to Luu's side. Nodding means to understand. "I can understand. Your language is very strange. I have never heard such a strange language. I am using spiritual magic as a bridge to talk to you, concentrating on what you have to say. I can feel it. Can you tell me where you are from?" Luu was dumbfounded, and then suddenly realized, no wonder why he shouted to shut up and He Wu didn't respond at all last night. People didn't know their own language at all, and Luu thought in vain that Chinese still had a place in another world. He tried the method that Black Mist told himself, and thought about it in his mind. After trying several times in a row, Luu finally managed to get on the line with this black fog. "I also have questions, do we each get what we need?" Black Mist was silent for a while. "Sorry, it's very difficult for me to maintain mental magic now, your words are very vague, it will take a little time. I received your request, I agree. It turns out that the internet speed is too slow. Who are you?" Luu became more and more confused about this strange black fog. After a while, the voice came. Loludus, a magician. Black Mist asked curiously after speaking, "It's your turn, who are you?" Luu patted his head and introduced himself, "Luu, as for my profession. I came to this strange world right after graduation. I belong to the homeless." Luu found that after he finished speaking, the mist around the black mist would flow quickly. Could this be the reflection of the black mist that he was doing his best to deal with his words? Luu, a very uncommon name, like someone I've heard of from a certain ancient kingdom-ruled area, and, next, don't mention irrelevant things, now well, there's no way to maintain this magic too well. Luu could also see that the black mist was uncomfortable. Every time she conveyed a message, a large amount of black mist would overflow from her body, and even the voice that was conveyed trembled. "Is it painful to speak? Where is this place?" Luu asked. "I don't know where this place is either. I just arrived in this area not long ago." Loludus asked, "You are not from this world, right? I can feel that you are not a summoned creature. The key is that you can hear my voice." There was no way to hide this matter, the language system was different, and the other party was a knowledgeable magician, so Luu nodded and admitted the fact. But he was really curious about the last sentence Loludus said. "If I can hear your voice, I'm not from this world." Unable to maintain communication, Loludus fell to the ground and rested for a while before slowly explaining the reason to Luu. Loludus was originally a human magician. About a month ago, she conducted a special magic experiment in her mansion. During the experiment, a mutation was suddenly discovered. The magical elements of the ritual were disordered, sweeping the entire laboratory, destroying the potion she was developing, and finally causing an explosion. "If it's just an explosion, it's not really a big problem." Luu said in astonishment, "Isn't it a big problem?" "This is not a big problem, so what is it?" Sure enough, in another world, the boundaries of common sense need to be expanded as soon as possible. "I'm a magician. Ordinary explosions can't hurt me at all." This time, the explosion was a little unexpected. Luu stared blankly at Loludus, who said he used to have a personality, and then looked at the group of dumplings exuding black mist. "A little unexpected?" Loludus himself did not expect that the magic current that swept the entire laboratory would continue to spurt on a large scale at the moment of the explosion. She stored a large number of magic scrolls, ritual magic contracts in the storage room, and the study room was disturbed by the flow of magic power, resonated. "Sorry, you said just now, it should be brief, it's good for you and me, in general." Luu begged, "How about speaking in human words?" Loludus's shaking tentacles froze. "My magic scrolls were all triggered by mistake." According to Loludus's own conjecture, the potion changed her figure. At her weakest point, the ritual magic, the transfer scroll, and the seal of the magic contract all took effect. This also caused Loludus to turn into the black mist, the core of the sphere, and the ghostly appearance, and came to this unfamiliar place. "Well, what does this have to do with you being unable to communicate with people?" "The sealing effect of contract magic. This magic is used for punishment. Originally, it was not very effective for a magician of my level, but in short, it is good that you know that this is the sealing effect." Loludus and Luu came to this point at the same time. It's just that Loludus looks even worse. Luu just can't communicate with people in this world, but he still has a body that can integrate into normal society. "Well, Loludus." She tried to communicate with the magician she encountered in the wild, but it was a fireball that responded to her. If that magician was not a beginner, Loludus should have been dissected as a strange monster. The effect of the seal is much stronger than Luu imagined. Loludus tried to use spiritual magic to communicate with slightly low-level intelligent monsters, but these monsters would become mad without exception. It is difficult to tell whether this is a function of his own medicine or the influence of the contract itself. What about the text? The written words will be deviated, making it impossible to read. Thinking is one thing, but the body will unknowingly write other things under the influence of the contract's seal. Damn, with such a powerful seal, you magicians really know how to play. Luu was shocked. The weak Lulutus heard what Luu said, and was silent for a while, sighed, and did not correct Luu's wrong statement. There should be few copies of this contract in the world. An explosion destroyed many treasures in the mansion. After I go back, can I recover some of my losses? After all, can I go back, and how long will it take? All kinds of questions came to mind in an instant, and Lulutus was helpless. Wait, can't you draw a picture? Why don't you use a pattern? Do you think my style will have the opportunity to communicate with others in such an abstract form as a pattern? Yes. Luu looked at Lulutus and expressed his sympathy. After explaining in one breath, Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com, Lulutus' tentacles all shrank back, and said tiredly, I can't maintain mental magic anymore. I need to rest for a while. Thank you for your dinner. After speaking, Lulutus just fell asleep. Luu stared fixedly at the black fog on the ground, recalling the conversation in his mind just now. Everything felt very strange. This is the first time he has come into contact with magic since he came to this world, and it is also the first time he has communicated with life in this world. After extinguishing the bonfire and letting the wind blow for a while, Luu probed out of the tree hole to observe for a while, and confirmed the safety of the surroundings, and then blocked the tree hole with a baffle woven with rattan and wood strips. Luu, who was still uneasy, looked around again through the gaps in the rattan, and then he lay down on the nest made of hay with confidence. No wonder Luu is so cautious. He has lived here for almost a month, but if he is a little careless, it will be the end of the reopening. Although he still has some doubts about the appearance of Lulutus. After all, what kind of person can make a potion that can turn him into such a chaotic appearance? The use of this medicine is worth thinking about. However, the seal of Lulutus is real, and she is the only person she can communicate with for so long. According to Lulutus, if she wants to become a normal person, she may need her own assistance more or less. Thinking of this, Luu didn't feel that the black fog was terrifying. Having been in this world for so long, I am always anxious to sleep. At least he can sleep well tonight. After Luu fell asleep, the sleeping Lulutus floated up and glanced at the baffle made by Luu. There's really no magic at all. Is it a different source of magic? After Luu got up, he looked at Lulutus floating in the air in front of him and yawned. I don't know why, but my dream last night was filled with black fog and ubiquitous tentacles. In the dream, he played hide and seek all night with tentacles who always wanted to get entangled. This will wake up, and my mind will still be filled with a bunch of weird images that tentacles want to wrap around. Regardless of Lulutus, Luu walked to the baffle of the tree hole and glanced outside. At this time, the sky was slightly bright, and the snow that suddenly fell last night had stopped, and there was not much snow. The fall of the first snow filled Luu with a sense of crisis. Without him, he had no food reserves for the winter at all. Luu sighed, walked to his straw nest, and began to count his existing food. Pine nuts, 2 mineral water bottles. Unknown, but I have personally observed 13 fruits that other animals can eat without any problems, and the sizes are still uneven. The last squirrel left by Luu's house was raided. Too little. Luu was worried. Are you worried about food? Lulutus's spiritual magic turned on the connection mode without warning. Luu, who was immersed in the daily life of machinery, finally came to his senses. Last night, he had a new guest in his tree hole. Thinking of the squirrel Lulutus ate last night, Luu couldn't help but have a headache. One more person divides the food. Are you hungry? Even if my body becomes like this, I still need to maintain energy intake. Luu also felt that he asked a very stupid question. He poured out half a bottle of pine nuts, put them in the lunch box in a small bowl, and divided them equally. The food is very lacking, I can only eat so much today. Loludis looked at the pine nuts in her bowl and was silent for a while. Thank you for your food. I won't eat it for free. You can say where you need my help. Luu used his fingernails to fight with the pine nut shell, and when he heard Loludis' voice, he laughed. I got another piece of useful information. Loludis is not willing to ask for her own food for nothing. After eating my food yesterday, I thank myself. This is education and a good character. Luu didn't talk nonsense. I don't have enough food, I need to stock up on food rations before the cold winter comes. Excuse me, do you have a good appetite? Loludis was stunned for a while, then glanced at the mineral water bottle that Luu used to store relaxo. That kind of pine nuts in a strange magical container, at least, I can eat a bottle a day. Luu thought about it, and probably figured out Loludis's appetite. Wait for me to go out. Come and help. The food for the two of us is not easy to get together. I just hope we can have better luck. As for this. Luu picked up the mineral water bottle and shook it. Isn't this some magic container, just plastic? Plastic, what do you mean? Luu and Loludis stared at each other. Oh, Loludis' black misty body seems to have no eyes. Plastic is. Luu, who found that the explanation was wrong, waved his hand irritably. You don't need to know too much about science. Science? Loludis asked. What is science? Luu regretted entangled in this topic. Talking about science with a magician from another world, talking about magic with a child who grew up under the red flag, is just as absurd. Seeing Luu's embarrassment, Loludis no longer bothered about this topic, but concentrated on eating pine nuts. To say that Loludis' tentacles are really convenient, each of the dozen or so tentacles twisted a pine nut and rubbed it hard to peel off the outer shell of the pine nut. This multi-threaded work is extremely efficient, making Loludis eat pine nuts one by one. Turn off your spiritual magic, I can hear the sound of your chewing. After speaking, Luu handed Loludis his pine nuts. It's not for you to eat, it's for you to peel it for me. Anyway, you have a lot of tentacles and it's easy to use. Loludis did not refuse, and neatly helped Luu deal with the pine nuts. Although pine nuts are sweet and delicious, they are not very filling. Loludis is okay. According to her, this body should have inherited the previous food intake, so there is no need to eat too much. But Luu is an adult after all. After eating these pine nuts with hot water, let alone half full, it's not enough for a stomach. I hope to have a good harvest today. Luu prayed to himself. Maybe it's because of bad luck for too long, good luck comes. Not long after Luu and Loludis left the tree hole, they found a lone wolf that was frozen the ground. It was covered in wounds, and it was unknown what it was fighting with. Luu and Loludis, who licked the bag as soon as they went out, were very happy, at least they didn't have to worry about eating tonight. The traps made by Luu are very rough. Dig a large hole with dense, sharpened sticks underneath. Finally, cover the pothole with branches. Luu couldn't figure out a trap that was too elaborate. This trap was the best thing he could come up with. And the results were not bad. Small animals stumbled in and jumped in disorder, which was basically a cold end. In a month, 3 or 2 unlucky beasts always fall into this trap. Of course, these grotesque beasts will never die if they step on them, that is, they will be injured and bleed. It's just that this bloodstain often leads to the arrival of some uninvited guests. For example, the white wolf. The leftovers that the white wolf hunted were always handled by Luu, which even gave him the illusion that he was cooperating with the white wolf. It turns out that good luck doesn't last forever, and the trap is empty. Luu, who had found nothing, was about to turn around and let Luludus float up to a few nearby trees to see if there were any tree holes to dig. The tentacles wrapped around Luu's waist without warning, and slammed back. Before Luu could realize what happened, a small dirt bag next to the area where the trap was located suddenly burst open. A mass of light green luster radiated under the light, with a slightly transparent gel-like object jumping into view. Its entire body is like a piece of soft candy that has been bent by someone, showing an arched shape, and a strange green light flashes at the front end of its body. Moments before the green light fully lit up, Luludus' tentacles stabbed out like sharp cones. The sharpness of Luludus' tentacles was beyond Luu's imagination, and she easily pierced through the monster's body, like a string of candied haws. The sound of puffs sounded one after another, and the monster's body quickly shrunken, and a large amount of light green juice flowed out of its body and dripped to the ground. "Don't be stunned, didn't you bring tools to pick up the juice?" Luludus' voice made Luu rush into action. Taking out a bottle from his backpack, looking at the viscous green juice, he hesitated for a moment, and pressed the mouth of the bottle against the hole where the leaking monster was pierced. The fingers lightly touched the monster's body. It was very cold, and the touch was similar to squeezing a piece of gel. After Luu filled the bottle, the juice became less and less. As Luludus slowly pulled out its tentacles, the monster's half-shrinked body fell to the ground. "What is this, slime?" After Luludus kept waving his tentacles to get rid of the mucus, Luu finally found the opportunity to ask his doubts. Luludus gave an "oh" in surprise. "You still know slime?" "Know some. It is indeed a slime, yes, this is an omnivorous jungle slime. Under normal circumstances, it can survive by absorbing the nutrients of sunlight, the earth, and vegetation. But, when winter comes, in order to ensure sufficient energy, they will start hunting mode. When an unsuspecting person like you is paralyzed by him, a large amount of corrosive liquid will be secreted. Anyway, in the end, even the bone residue will become its nutrients." With lingering fears, Luu looked at the stall on the ground. He did see the green rhizomes exposed just now, but he was so anxious to look at the trap that he ignored this terrifying detail. "The rest of the body tissue of the slime can be eaten. I'm going to take it back." "You know slime, so can you cook slime?" "Depend on. This is too much. How do you cook this sticky stuff?" Wait. Viscose. Is it possible that after cooking it, you can taste the gummy texture similar to the stewed pork knuckle?" Finished. Yu reading www. When yuyugonshu.com thought of pork knuckle, Luu's mouth was filled with tears. A month, a whole month. He really wanted to eat meat happily, gulps of pork belly, rock candy elbows with a big bowl of rice. "Are you sure you can eat it?" Luu asked. Luludus said, "When I attended the imperial court banquet, I ate at least 3 slime-related dishes and 4 slime-related desserts. Slimes absorb energy and convert it into pure magic elements. It is a treasure. There is even an industry dedicated to keeping slimes in captivity." "You really don't know?" "How do I know? I saw a live slime for the first time today." Luu explained. "This means, no one in your area has ever eaten slime? What kind of food desert, even slime dishes dare not develop? I don't know if there is a problem with Luludus's spiritual magic. Why did this topic turn to the desert of food? There is no slime menu, that's because we haven't seen a slime before, okay? Can't bear it." When Luu left school after graduation, he brought a backpack of bottles and jars with all kinds of seasonings, because he was delicious. In the school cafeteria, Mr. K was fed, and Mr. K had to pass a sanity check, which tortured Luu's taste buds all the time, and finally forced Luu to learn both hands. "Isn't he just a slime, be him?" He dug out a tree hole and robbed a group of squirrels. Luludus put a string of slime on her tentacles and held it above her head. The two who had been busy for a long time left the area with the joy of harvesting. Before leaving, Luu made some disguise for the trap, looking forward to the harvest next time. How do you evaluate the taste of the stewed slime? Biting like eating jelly, slippery. The taste is like a jelly without seasonings, and it can also taste some obvious earthy flavors. Luu stopped after just 2 or 3 bites. On the one hand, it didn't suit his appetite, on the other hand, he needed to save food. Seeing that Luu only ate a little bit, he used his tentacle to skin the wolf while using another tentacle to eat slime. Loludus spoke. Aren't you going to eat? Loludus, who misunderstood Luu, comforted, actually, you have already cooked very well. There are no spices, only a little salt and a little oil. It's very good to be able to do it like this. Because Loludus pulled him at a critical moment, Luu was less wary now. After all, helping each other is the most important thing. Hearing Loludus' voice, Luu slowly shook his head, whipped up a wooden stick, and poked the charcoal fire in the fire pit. Luu, let's talk. After eating the slime in the bowl, Loludus stopped skinning the wolf and patted each other humanely. With this serious look, Luu has already guessed what the next topic will be. I know, we're not familiar yet, you're wary of me. Luu raised his eyebrows and responded calmly, your style is not a plus point for me. Knowing that Loludus was trying to bring her closer by saving her during the day, so that they could communicate further, Luu also expressed his inner scruples frankly. I understand. Loludus was silent for a while, and the black mist body seemed to freeze. I hope you can help me get me back to the way I was. The bonfire that Luu stirred with a wooden stick, coupled with the cold wind pouring in outside the tree hole, made the inside of the tree hole flicker. Luu's face sank in the dark, and the firelight only illuminated half of his cheek. Loludus didn't know what Luu was thinking, but the expressionless Luu made her want to say something more. What can I get? Just when Loludus was going to add something, Luu spoke lightly. What do you want? Saying that, Loludus took a sip of the juice she got from that slime today. In her words, these juices are rich in magic elements, and although they are not helpful to her condition, they can make up for the huge loss of maintaining spiritual magic. I don't know how long this can of slime juice will last. Luu shook his head and smiled. If you ask me to speak, any request I say may exceed the limit of your ability. It's like, I want to have a lot of wealth, and the wealth is unmatched. Do you have the ability to give me? Loludus' tentacles swayed vigorously, indicating that it was indeed impossible. So, please think about how much you can pay for helping you get back to your original state. Seeing Loludus thinking seriously, and the black mist surrounding her body tending to solidify again, Luu also had a basic judgment on Loludus' portrait. It's unclear how strong the young magician is. Whether she has a wealth of knowledge or not, since she doesn't know much about the world, she can't judge. She responded so quickly to the sneak attack on the slime in the morning, and she revealed before that she was inventing a new type of potion. If there are no mistakes or omissions in the spiritual magic, and the meaning of the word invention is confused, it is enough to prove that she is somewhat capable. I don't want to be favored by others in vain. From the conversations so far, I can feel her good upbringing, not to mention her character. Also, the experience seems to be insufficient. Luu glanced at Loludus, whose tentacles were intertwined, like a ball of yarn formed under the body of black mist. It's too stupid to save yourself in the morning, to find the right time to meet frankly, but not to prepare a few bargaining chips in advance. And Loludus easily agreed to Luu's proposal, let her say what she can offer. Luu was convinced that when she went out to buy food, she should be the kind of person who would be fooled by the stall owner with a few words. Sorry, I really can't think of anything I can give you for a while. The only thing I can guarantee is that you can get the friendship of a 7th-order magician. If you are very thirsty for money, I can try to meet your request for the amount within my ability. Lulutus spoke very sincerely and convinced Luu that she was indeed a young lady with very little experience and a good family background. However, compared to the information Luu had already summed up, he was more curious about the seventh order magician that Lulutus mentioned. Sorry, I have no idea about the seventh order magician, please explain. Rank is the dividing line of magician's strength, which is assessed by magicians' associations or local regimes in various places. The first level is an entry-level magician. The higher the level, the stronger the magician's strength. The voice that echoed in Luu's mind suddenly became louder and full of momentum. Luu was stunned. Although he already had the answer in his heart, he couldn't help but ask. A seventh order magician, how many? I also said that the higher the level, the stronger the magician's strength, and the fewer the number of magicians. Then how old are you? 17. Lulutus said calmly, I don't know about other places. In the Solan Empire where I am the youngest seventh order magician. Luu choked. 17 years old, 7th grade. Are all the sorcerers of the Solonian Empire monsters? This is a perfect fit for Luu's speculation. There is a high probability that Lulutus came from the noble class. Although Luu had been in the wilderness survival mode during the time he had crossed over, he still had a good brain. Knights and infantry in steel armor seen while foraging for food. I accidentally saw a group of suspected adventurers holding cold weapons to slash and cast spells with staff. From these few details, it is not difficult to see that the governing systems of many regimes in this global context basically cannot escape the feudal stereotype. As a part of this world, magic is a power that can influence the regime. As long as the brains of those in power are not broken, the channels and resources for cultivating magicians will be limited accordingly. 17 years old is a 7th order magician, it feels very cheap. Luu slapped sideways. Lulutus, who seemed very proud to talk about magicians, really added an explanation. Cheap. Lulutus said sternly, I don't know what form magicians exist in your world, and I don't know what their status is. In our place, not everyone can awaken a magician, talent, ability, channel, knowledge. Luu interrupted Lulutus, and his information was all messed up. Lulutus would still like to thank him for being the one who could hear the words. In exchange for her poor personality, she could make her doubt her life. It is enough to know that magicians are not street goods. There are thresholds, depending on talent, ability, need channels, knowledge accumulation, and resources. The corner of Luu's mouth rose. He knew what he should ask Lulutus for. The friendship of a 7th order magician is too broad, and it is useless if you have money or strength. Luu said slowly, why don't you help me become a magician? As a 7th order magician, Lulutus, once the two start to cooperate with each other, they will be together for a long time. During this period of time, she taught herself and gradually embarked on the path of a magician. Having the power to protect herself is obviously the best choice. And since they came here inexplicably, Luu also planned to live a different life and have a new identity. Thinking of this, Luu added with a smile, I won't be demanding to be a 7th order magician, you just make me a 6th order magician. Lulutus' voice was trembling, and the words echoing in Luu's mind were somewhat vague. Lulutus picked up the jar of slime juice and took a few more sips, which stabilized the mental magic that showed signs of collapse. Luu felt that his communication with Lulutus was like opening a private chat room, and Lulutus, who was in charge of providing signals, could always be disconnected from the internet. I'm sorry I can't give you this guarantee. There are many uncertain factors in the awakening of a magician. I have also seen examples of being born in a family of magicians but unable to become entry-level magicians. In the absence of certainty that you can wake up, any guarantee I make is a deception to you. Luu applauded gently, looking at Lulutus with admiration in his eyes, even the black mist that kept surging was pleasing to the eye. This time, Luu completely let go of his defenses. According to what he said before, Luu already knew that the magician needs to have a awakening process, which was specifically pointed out by Lolotus, which is enough to prove that it is a hurdle. After he made a request, as long as Lolotus agreed casually, Luu would be wary. But Lolotus reiterated this detail again, and said it very bluntly. With sincerity for sincerity, Luu said with a smile, I have 2 requirements in total. The matter of becoming a magician can be finalized after leaving here, and the second one is relatively simple. Whether I wake up to become a magician or not, after you return to your original state, I hope to get your protection. In the worst case, I hope to eat and wait in your mansion to die. It shouldn't be a big problem to raise an idler for a family that can cultivate such a young magician. Taking advantage of their shelter, he can be considered a way out, and he can find a way out during this period. Lolotus was silent for a while, then nodded in agreement with Luu's request. Seeing Luu, who was assured by himself, happily lying on the straw pile with his hands on the back of his head, Lolotus couldn't help asking curiously. You don't ask me what needs to be done to restore it to the original state, and you don't worry that the process will be bumpy and the journey is extremely dangerous. Luu turned his face sideways, revealing a set of white teeth. He smiled and said, Why worry, the worst is nothing but death. Lolotus, do you know how I got here this month? I came to this world inexplicably, and I couldn't understand the language. In order to get information, I went around to explore, and I saw a team of knights stab to death a homeless person with a spear from a distance. Behind them are a group of dirty, scrawny slaves or prisoners who have their hands tied and whipped with whips. At that moment, I realized that I, a person who did not understand their language, appeared rashly and either died or became a slave. And I will never be a slave. Luu said firmly. I can't get in touch with humans, so I can only live in this tree hole all day. At night, the roars of the nearby animals come and go one after another. This makes me have to hold a knife every day when I sleep. This knife is either for the beast that rushed into the tree hole, or for myself. This is Luu's true feeling over the past month. Fear and loneliness haunt him all the time. The most important thing is that he can't see the reason for him to endure so hard. He can't be a savage in this tree hole all his life, right? If Robinson can play farming on a desert island, that's because there are no ruthless characters on the island. But what about him? There may be so many ruthless characters in this forest that they can be sold as blind boxes for half a year without duplicates. Luu was lucky. According to what Lolotus gave him on his return trip today, he was able to avoid some troublesome monsters in a month because the weather was getting colder. Luu was also unfortunate. He clearly came to a strange world, but he could only hide in a tree hole tremblingly, feeling uneasy, unable to even see this world. The appearance of Lolotus gave him hope, not only the hope of leaving here, but also the hope of integrating into this world. Lolotus needs his help to restore the original state. Why doesn't Luu need Lolotus to lead the way for him? Do I need to sign a contract? Luu asked jokingly. Lolotus asked angrily, do you think I can do that kind of thing? Then, let's shake hands. Luu stretched out his hand, we need to work together for a long time in the future. One of Lolotus' tentacles wrapped around Luu's outstretched hand and shook it gently. Strange, why is the texture of this tentacle so sticky? Lolotus, what kind of potion did you toss with to create this look? Luu was also unequivocal, and immediately explained the current situation of the two to Lolotus. The problem they urgently need to solve is communication. After all, if you want to unlock the seal of Lolotus, you have to go to the inhabited area and collect the corresponding materials. Luu couldn't speak the language, and Lolotus' ability to speak was sealed, which was equivalent to both being dumb. Lolotus is in an infinite loop. To unlock the seal, you need to be able to speak. If you want to speak, you need to break the seal. Now the only one who can break this endless cycle is Luu. I need the language and text of this world, as well as some basic knowledge. These two things are essential. Luu is ready to learn a foreign language, and he doesn't know whether he can reach the level of barrier-free listening and reading in one winter. Loludis rolled up the half bottle of slime juice with her tentacles and shook it in front of Luu. If the mental magic is stable and smooth enough, I can probably speed up your information acquisition. But I need materials, and the materials that can provide a lot of magic elements must be sufficient. Luu glanced at the slime that he had cut into pieces and hung on the wall, and sighed helplessly. But where are we going to find so many slimes? Loludis' tentacles swayed gently, and her tone was full of curiosity and excitement. What do you call hitting? What do you call fire? Lighter. Luu said, taking out the lighter from his backpack. Yes, this is it, can you show me? Please. When Luu lit the bonfire today, he felt that Loludis was not right. He flew up and down beside him, spinning around him. At the time, she thought she was interested in the process of cooking slimes by herself, but now it seems that she is really interested in lighters. What is there to be excited about by this thing? I saw Loludis' tentacles wrapped around the lighter, and the black mist gushed out, drowning the lighter. If you don't want to help me drill wood and make fire every day, you'd better not eat the lighter. Luu quickly got up to stop it. Luu doesn't smoke. The reason why he has a lighter is because his dormitory photographed it in his hand. Perch, maybe you'll smoke in the future. The head of the house patted Luu on the shoulder while calling out his nickname. Forget it, the entire dormitory is full of smokers, and the dormitory students are basically surrounded by clouds, as if they were in a wonderland. Having enjoyed this environment, he would never want to smoke in his life. He originally wanted to say this, but looking at the empty dormitory, he silently put away the lighter. Unexpectedly, this lighter finally came in handy in a place that Luu could not imagine. It's strange. Why doesn't this magic tool of yours have any magical aura? The black mist disappeared, and Loludis was puzzled, holding a small lighter in two tentacles. Here we go again. How could it have magical aura? This thing is just an ordinary lighter, what do you think it is? But I saw you gently. Hey, where is the mechanism, why can't I find it? Luu, who couldn't stand it any longer, stepped forward, grabbed the lighter, pushed open the lid of the lighter, and pressed it down. Seeing the flames burst out, Loludis was stunned. Got it, I repeat, this is not magic, this is... Luu just wanted to blurt out science, but he held back. The topic of magic and science almost broke him last time. It is a wise choice not to talk about it. Loludis doesn't need to know too much about science. Loludis loves lighters, although she can't understand how this odd-looking thing generates flames. If it wasn't a magic tool, could it possibly contain phosphorus powder from salamanders or a match that could burn for a long time? It's time to get to the point, you asked me for a lighter, isn't it just for fun? Loludis returned the lighter to Luu and said, I just want to tell you through this thing that I mistakenly thought was a magic tool. Some magic tools carried by some magicians will have some cores that drive magic. Some of these cores will retain sufficient magic elements, which can be used with a little guidance. Luu covered his forehead, Miss Loludis, we can't even talk to each other. You still expect us to find a magician to communicate with? I didn't plan to contact the magician. Loludis corrected, also, I'm not a big lady. Loludis said, you said that you have seen cavalry with slaves passing through, which is enough to prove that although this area is remote, it is not an uninhabited place. In such a place, there must be a large number of adventurers active. They take risks in this area. I don't think everyone can return safely. Luu was taken aback, he understood what Loludis was looking for, and at the same time he also remembered something. I did see a group of people in strange clothes fighting together before. That scene was like light pollution. Loludis was excited, her tentacles quickly wrapped around Luu, and she planned to go out. It wasn't Luu who reminded her that it was already dark, and it was easy not only to get lost when going out, but also to be targeted by strange things, so Loludis might have rushed out. Early the next morning, Luu took Loludis to the area where the magician Huabai was remembered. Since more than half a month has passed, the corpse is naturally gone, but some objects left behind after the battle can still be found. Holding the knight's sword drawn from a big tree, Luu carefully followed behind Loludis, helping her to clean up the surrounding snow. And Loludis wrapped a tentacle around Luu's waist, for fear that a monster would suddenly attack nearby. Now that the fate of the two is tied together, Luu can't have an accident no matter what. Loludis didn't dare to bet that she would meet someone who was outside the seal rules. Suddenly, Loludis' tentacles and Luu's feet touched something hard at the same time. Loludis was about to use his tentacles to remove the snow, when he glanced at Luu and found that he was also shoveling snow with a knight's sword as a shovel, and he was 4 or 5 steps away from him. After hesitating for a while, Loludis tried to lift Luu into the air and pulled him to her side. Luu experienced a lift for no reason, and he was a little confused. "I found something, why did you drag me here? Your combat power is too low, I'm afraid that something will happen to you." Loludis said. Her tentacles didn't stop, and after pushing the snow away, a long and slender stick, like a green bamboo, came into view. "Put it in the backpack." After Luu took it, he looked at it for a while, and was convinced that this was the staff used by the magician in this world. "I don't know if it is necessary to have the corresponding magic item to cast spells. If that's the case, will there be interference magic that specifically removes weapons?" Returning to the place where Luu stepped on something just now, Loludis tentacled a scroll, and a book with a shiny metallic title page appeared in front of him. "Fortunately, this can also be used." After speaking, he threw the book to Luu. Luu opened the book and saw the words of this world for the first time. This is a very obscure pictograph, some of which have a cuneiform flavor, but are also mixed with some crooked tadpoles, like relatives of oracle bone inscriptions. After opening this book, Luu became illiterate again. After searching for a long time, just before leaving, Loludis dug out a heavy cloth bag filled with brass-colored coins, which was a pleasant surprise. The two didn't stop there, and quickly returned to the tree hole along the way they came. The reason why they were in such a hurry was because both of them saw the bones with no flesh and blood under the snow. The bones were scattered, some were broken in two, but all were clean. It was as clean as if it had been licked by something. According to the time of witnessing the fire, Luu did not think that this was the effect that natural decay could achieve. Along the way, Luu stopped several times to let Loludis repeatedly confirm that nothing was quietly following him, and then returned to the tree hole with peace of mind. Loludis entered the tree hole with a large bag of loot and began to count. And Luu took out some branches from the tree hole, broke them, and placed them in all directions of the big tree hole. Finally, he picked up snow and covered these branches. Some monsters hibernate with food stockpiled, and some monsters lack food, and have no choice but to start hunting mode in the severe cold. Although the body of Loludis is very reliable, it is definitely not wrong to be cautious. Especially now that both of them see the possibility of getting out of trouble. After finishing all this, when Luu returned to the tree hole, he found that the entire tree hole was extremely bright, and the colorful lights complemented each other. If it wasn't for seeing Loludis' black mist body floating not far away, Luu would have thought that he had crossed over again, and he had crossed into a disco. All kinds of magic tools that I brought back have been smashed to the ground. Realizing that Luu was back, Loludis put down the things tied to the tentacles and put them in the grooves that Luu had cut on the wall of the tree hole. After leaving Loludis, those strange objects with different shapes dimmed, no longer as gorgeous as before. It should be reluctant to use it for a while, but I hope your ability to accept it is stronger. You don't need to worry too much about my ability to accept me. Besides studying hard with you, can I do anything else? With no distractions, I believe that the learning efficiency will be very high. Liu said, and checked the last trophy in his backpack, the bag of copper coins. The copper coin was shaken to the ground, and a folded piece of cloth came into view. Picking it up and looking at it, it was densely written with words, but Liu couldn't understand a single word. Loludus took it, stared at it for a while, and sighed. It's a suicide note. Most people who go out on an adventure will always carry one with them. If they are buried in the wilderness, they can hope that the person who picks up the relic will do something for him. The owner of the suicide note, Naka, left a total of 175 copper coins and 6 silver coins. Naka hopes that the person who finds this suicide note can help her give the money to her younger brother who lives in the capital of the Yas dynasty. This is the content of the front of the cloth, and the reverse reads, as a thank you, the person who picks it up can take 3 silver coins. You may think it's absurd, but there are indeed some adventurers who will faithfully fulfill this promise that no one can constrain and no one can witness. After all, people who venture out to make money are fighting against various accidents. It is common for people who were alive and kicking the day before to have a corpse the next day. When that day comes, when they die, they will also hope that the things they have desperately accumulated can go back to their relatives. Of course, it's common to be ignorant. After all, money is such a thing, hey. Liu heard sadness from Loludus's words, and he still couldn't figure out whether it was because of empathy with Naka, who had never met, or because of the money mentioned in the last sentence. Liu glanced at Loludus, smiled, and then took out 3 silver coins from the coin pile. The remaining coins were reloaded. Loludus admired Liu's approach, and with a flick of his tentacles, he grabbed the crystal core he had just taken out of the staff. It's time to start, don't you want to learn language and knowledge? I'll say it first, the learning process may be a little painful, you have to be a little mentally prepared. Liu smiled. Learning pain? No matter how painful it is it painful to memorize chemical reaction equations when you take chemistry class by yourself? What's not balanced, what's wrong with symbols, what's wrong with using units, misspelled elements? Liu hurriedly ate a big mouthful of pine nuts with warm water, then patted his chest, signaling Loludus to teach him boldly. Although Loludus is only 17 years old, she definitely has no experience in teaching people, but since she can become a 7th-order magician, if you say that her ability to generalize knowledge is poor, Liu would not believe it if she was beaten to death. To have amazing achievements in a certain subject, information organization and knowledge induction are all essential skills. Not to mention, what she teaches is her native language that she uses every day. Hearing what Liu said, Loludus held the crystal nucleus with one tentacle and placed the other on Liu's forehead. The connection of spiritual magic unfolded. Liu was keenly aware that this time the chat room opened by Loludus seemed to be different from before. When Loludus's voice was transmitted before, Liu's mind always had a buzzing echo, or there would be obvious faults in the transmission of information. This time was different. When Loludus tried the mic, the sound was crisp and pleasant, with no noise at all, but a clear one. It seems that sufficient magic power has a very intuitive impact on the chat experience. If this brings Loludus back to her peak state, what form will this chat room take? The brain suddenly numb, followed by a sense of dizziness. The bridge constructed by Loludus' spiritual magic begins to open to traffic. Several characters appeared in Liu's mind, and Loludus carefully repeated their thoughts. Teaching begins. Liu didn't dare to neglect and picked up a branch. When Loludus taught a word, he practiced it on the ground with a branch. A good memory is not as good as a bad writing, but the ability to listen and read will never meet his needs. Just as he was writing the word good, Liu's memory surged in his mind, and he unconsciously wrote the most familiar and cordial Chinese characters. Loludus has been observing Liu's situation. The previous writing was crooked and unsightly, but Liu's memory is really good, and he can remember it firmly after writing it 2 or 3 times. The moment she wrote the word good, she was stunned for a while, and then she guessed that it was a common word in Luu's world. Luu stared blankly at OK on the ground, raised his head thoughtfully, and looked at Lulutus. Are you interested in learning my language and writing? Lulutus looked at Luu's writing and became interested. It takes a lot of energy and magic to send information to Luu in one direction. If Luu is also involved, the burden will inevitably increase. However, Lulutus couldn't resist the temptation. With just one glance, she was convinced that it was a dead word. This kind of dead text is difficult to crack by conventional methods, whether it is used for dialogue or for storing information that must be encrypted, it is the best choice. Lulutus was overjoyed by the thirst for knowledge. In this way, every time Lulutus taught Luu a word, Luu would write 2 words on the ground at the same time, and whisper it out. Lulutus is also like a child who has just started learning Chinese characters, with her tentacles poking on the ground and drawing square Chinese characters. When passing characters to Luu, she could be heard whispering something in a strange accent from time to time. Luu didn't know why, the annoyance that was in his heart dissipated at once. He never imagined that he would one day be in the same room with a strange tentacle monster, and concentrate on learning each other's language. However, this feeling is not bad. Originally, I just lived every day in a daze, with no goals like Walking Dead. Now he has a real purpose. Learn everything Lulutus taught yourself, then leave here and appreciate this magical world seriously. He didn't want to disappear silently in this remote and lonely place. He wants to leave his trace in this world. Lulutus and Luu's brains were exhausted after a night of study. Especially Lulutus, who maintains spiritual magic, teaches Luu words and languages, and remembers what Luu said and wrote. Luu also discouraged Lulutus after seeing her fatigued state, whether it would be more appropriate to teach her later. After all, her state is not so good now. However, Lulutus refused. I don't know if it's because of teaching while learning, or because Lulutus's teaching using spiritual magic as a medium has a wonderful effect. After getting up, Luu reviewed what he learned yesterday, and he didn't forget a single bit. After lunch, Lulutus and Luu agreed that they could learn that it was dark. Facts have proved that when someone accompanies you to study and 2 people work together to progress towards a common goal, learning becomes a kind of enjoyment. Once this kind of atmosphere is formed, the learning efficiency will also improve by leaps and bounds. Half a month passed, and the first magic tool crystal nucleus that Lulutus brought back was completely drained of its magic power, and could no longer resonate with Lulutus, emitting a beautiful light. There was only 1 piece of slime and wolf meat left in the tree hole. Except for the pine nuts and some miscellaneous fruits that the 2 of them went out to dig out of the squirrel nest these days, the food harvest was almost zero. While the 2 made rapid progress in language learning, the crisis of food shortage came again. Luu spoke the language of this world with an awkward accent. If these demons, potions can be exchanged for food, that would be great. Knowing that it is better to speak more and practice this truth, Luu starts to use the language of this world as long as he can remember the grammar and the corresponding words. With the excellent experience of magicians, Lulutus found a lot of good potions in this inaccessible place. During her study not long ago, Lulutus also sighed and said that if there is a suitable environment, she can try to make a potion that makes spiritual magic more stable. The 2 of them take it together, and the learning efficiency may be improved a lot. No animals stepped into Luu's trap at all. In this cold season, there are no living creatures even near the tree hole. Luckily, it was the graduation season when Luu crossed over, and there was a quilt in the things he packed, which prevented him from tossing and turning in this cold weather. As for Lulutus, she has a special way to deal with severe cold. Before the bonfire goes out every night, poking the tentacles into the flame and absorbing some of the flame's energy is enough to maintain the body's temperature. After getting along for a while, Lulutus discovered a little secret of Luu. Luu, who handled the details of his work perfectly, slept poorly. He often kicks the quilt when he sleeps, and even in his dreams he rounds the quilt together as a pillow. This made Lulutus have to float on Lu's quilt after he fell asleep and cover him with tentacles. There is no way, although Lulutus found a herbal remedy that can ward off the cold and cure a cold, but a cold at this time will affect the learning progress of the two of them. Today, the small text class is suspended. Finding food is the most important thing. Do you have any opinion? Luu chose to say this sentence in Chinese. Lulutus understood it unexpectedly and gave a reply. It's better, find a month's ration, so that it won't disturb our progress. This memory, this learning ability, it seems that it is not without reason to become a 7th-order magician at the age of 17. Although the oral pronunciation is blunt, it is not far from the standard pronunciation. Is this the difference between people? After being together for more than half a month, the two have gotten to know each other very well. Luu was in charge of cooking and Lulutus was in charge of chores. The two had a clear division of labor and seamless cooperation. The two who made a promise in a desperate situation were extremely satisfied with each other. After turning the small pot for cooking soup upside down to extinguish the bonfire, after confirming that there would be no hidden dangers, the two pulled up the baffle to block the entrance of the tree hole. It wasn't over yet. Luu leaned down, picked up the snow, and smeared it on the baffle. Lulutus didn't ask Luu why he did it, and immediately waved his tentacles to help Luu do it. By the time it was completely completed, the tree hole in front of him had already merged with the surrounding white snow scene. It may be a busy day outside today, so we have to be more careful, but don't come home with the spoils and find that the home is gone. Snow drifted on Luu's face, cold. Looking up at Tianxin, the white fluff fell in an airtight manner, and there was no sign of stopping. The size of the snow directly affects the time of today's event, which makes Luu a little worried. Lulutus still tied Luu's waist with a tentacle. Seeing that Luu was walking in the snow that had not reached her calf, she made another proposal. I'll support you with my tentacles. The snow here is very deep. Luu wanted to firmly reject this proposal, but Lulutus had a keen insight into his thoughts and persuaded him. No one sees it anyway, so it's not ashamed. Looking up and looking into the distance, the trail leading to the area where the traps were placed has no trace of the past. If it wasn't for the mark on the tree before, I'm afraid both of them would have lost their way. The snow is also getting deeper and deeper. When I left the tree hole, I didn't have any shoes until I got here. Not wanting to step on the snow to open the blind box, he sighed and nodded to Lulutus. Lulutus was also unambiguous, 7 or 8 tentacles stretched out together, wrapped around Luu's waist and thighs, and with a little strength, lifted Luu to the top of her head. Now that's all right, Luu, who is at a high place, can just open his vision and report the surrounding situation to Lulutus in advance. Even this shape is really weird. I don't know how someone would feel when they saw a cloud of black mist with a bunch of tentacles and held a person high above their head. Lulutus, who was moving slowly to take care of Luu before, could finally take advantage of floating and move forward at full speed. After a while, Luu patted Lulutus' tentacle. There is something strange in the northwest. Luu took a close look at it for a while. There is an inexplicable bulge on the snow. It looks huge. Isn't it a slime again? With insufficient tools and seasonings, and a small amount of salt to be eaten, slimes mixed with grassy and muddy smells are really conscientious food. In order to give slime the greatest respect, Luu creatively tried a variety of slime dishes in the past half-month. Found some wild garlic and made a plate of garlic slime. Made a slime-medicated pot with some mild herbs. Treat the slime as a potato, mash it into a paste, and make a slime paste. This is the obsession of a foodie. Maybe it was because he got used to slime cooking, Luu found that he could enjoy slime as a different kind of zucchini. Lulutus floated closer, felt it seriously, and denied Luu's guess. It doesn't have any breath, it's a dead thing. The two approached cautiously, and were surprised to find that it was a cow with a large hole in its abdomen and its internal organs had been nibbled cleanly. Not only one, but Luu raised his head and looked into the distance. About a dozen meters away, another cow fell into the snow. The method of death was exactly the same. Luu always felt like he had seen this gnawed position, this way of eating. After confirming that the surroundings were safe, Loludus put Luu down, while she quickly followed the direction where the two cows fell. When he returned to Luu's side again, Loludus said suspiciously, "It's so strange. There were 4 cows dead around here, and each of them had their stomachs eaten, and the rest of them were not intact." Luu also frowned. When his dagger pierced into the body of the dead cow in front of him, he could still feel some toughness. It was not completely frozen, indicating that the cow didn't die for long. Loludus, do farmers need livestock for farming? Naturally, it is necessary to cultivate farmland. Most of the domesticated monsters are equipped in the fields of the powerful. The people at the bottom still use common cattle and horses as their main farming partners. Luu looked at the wear marks on the neck of this old cow over the years, and the hole in the nose, with a solemn expression. Loludus also responded quickly. In this weather, in this place, how could there be cattle? Luu didn't talk nonsense. He took out the knight's sword he picked up last time, and wiped the snow on it with his sleeve. Seeing that Loludus was still thinking about the reason why the cattle appeared here, Luu woke her up. Don't think too much, cut the meat first and take it back to the tree hole. The speed is faster, and the change will happen later. Loludus' tentacles slid into the cow's body and tore it with force. Luu was not idle either. She stabbed and stabbed at the gap that Loludus poked with her tentacles, swung her arms around the frozen position, raised her knight's sword, and slashed violently. Fortunately, Luu had exercised before, otherwise, if he slashed so frequently, most people would be out of breath. Especially after continuous exertion, Luu's hand began to soften, and the sword in his hand became heavier and heavier. With the efforts of Luu and Loludus, a whole cow was finally divided into large pieces that were easy to carry. You take the cow's head and the cow's leg back first. Seeing that Loludus was taking meat near the back of the cow, Luu stopped her. Cow, a bull's head. Luu was puzzled by Loludus' surprise. Yes, bull Tao. The two stood in the cold wind and looked at each other for a few seconds. Although they couldn't see Loludus' expression, Luu vaguely felt that the other party was somewhat resistant to the bull's head. You guys, don't eat bull's head. Loludus hesitated for a while, observed Luu's face, considered the words, and said, we basically don't eat cow's head. Don't eat the internal organs. Loludus's voice was a little stiff. In general, all kinds of internal organs are the materials for making potions, and it is rare to see people eating them. The subtext is that they feel disgusting and dirty, so they basically don't eat it. Luu wanted to sigh with emotion, but after thinking about it, people who can say that very few people eat animal entrails rarely bend down to see how the poor live. Poor people don't care if they are dirty, disgusting or disgusting, but all meat is a good thing. There is no need to tangle and explain here. So far, Luu has not felt her arrogance towards the people at the bottom from her communication with Loludus, which is enough. The difference in living environment will inevitably make her mind unable to turn around, and these are small problems. Luu ended the topic with the simplest sentence, I know how to make it delicious, I will make it for you. Loludus loosened the tentacles that were tightly wrapped around the bull's head, and the bull's head rolled onto the snow. Luu was stunned. He didn't expect Loludus to resist so much. In order to prevent Loludus from misunderstanding, he decided to follow her wishes. Just as he stepped forward, planning to say something to Loludus, a sudden change occurred. Loludus' tentacles threw everything to the ground, accelerated, and rushed towards Luu. Luu, who was carried into the air by his tentacles, opened his subconsciously closed eyes. His eyes swept around quickly, and Luu, who didn't see anything, wanted to ask Loludus what he was sensing. In the corner of his eye, something suddenly moved. Suddenly turning his head to look, Luu broke out in a cold sweat all of a sudden. Optical camouflage, right? The flying snow has dyed the earth white, and the white wolf with white fur is in it, completely blending in with the surrounding scenery. If the white wolf hadn't moved, Luu wouldn't have found out that he had quietly come around him. The sight of this one-percentile white wolf was firmly fixed on Luu and Loludus, and he walked step by step to the beef they had just cut. The white wolf lowered his head and sniffed the beef, raised his head, and bared his teeth at the two of them. In the vast expanse of whiteness, the blue eyes of the white wolf exuded a fascinating aura, as if Luu and Loludus would burst into pieces as long as they took a step closer. Luu, who was lifted up by Loludus, rubbed his eyes and kept looking at the snow, which made his eyes sting. Loludus, this white wolf seems to be the one I've seen before. Before it ignored you and took its prey because it was full, but today, it doesn't look like it is full. Loludus said embarrassedly, we tampered with its food, and it doesn't look very happy. Can you beat it? It's hard to say, this kind of wolf is at least a tyrant in the forest. A normal monster sees it only as a snack. If the Adventurers Guild issues a request, it will be assessed at least with the starting point of fine steel. Luu recalled that in the rating of adventurers, Jing Gang seemed to be of the third rank. The white wolf pressed its paw on the huge bull's head and let out a chilling howl. The meaning is obvious, he is very dissatisfied with the two thieves trying to steal his prey. Luu saw it very clearly. Uyukanshu www.uyuganshu.com. The white wolf's sharp claws tore the frozen ox's head with ease. If such a claws hit a person. Luu wiped his eyes again and calmly asked Loludus to raise himself a little higher. Loludus didn't know what Luu was going to do, so she did. This time, Luu could really see it. There are more than one wounds on the front paws of the white wolf. There were bloodstains on the spot where it stood. It could not have been left by him when he was hunting cattle. When we arrived just now, the snow had already covered up the blood sprayed out earlier. These blood, it bleeds itself. Have you noticed that this white wolf has only shown half of its body to us since it appeared until now, never changed sides, and never faced us directly? No need for Luu to speculate. Loludus's keen sense of smell smelled the scent sent by the wind. The white wolf, who kept turning his head and staring, began to gasp for breath. Although he still grinned at Luu and the others, his expression became more and more painful and distorted. This directly confirmed Luu's idea. The white wolf was seriously injured, and the wounds were all concentrated on the other side that they couldn't see at the moment. When Loludus discovered the white wolf also discovered Loludus. Bai Lang, who didn't dare to show his cowardice, could only endure the pain and come out, pretending to be nothing, hoping that Loludus and Luu would be scared away directly. However, Loludus and Luu dare not move. In the face of a beast like you, wouldn't running around trigger your hunting instinct? The two were so frightened by the white wolf that they were in a dilemma and froze. This also led to the white wolf's play, which couldn't go on. The white wolf gasped faster and faster, and his facial expression, who could still maintain his standing position, twitched suddenly, staggered back 2 steps, and happened to step on the piece of meat that Luu had cut. The white wolf, who had lost his center of gravity, fell to the ground in an embarrassment. With a muffled bang, the snow fluttered, covering the figure of the white wolf. When the white wolf appeared again in Luu's sight, it had opened its mouth wide and was lying on its side on the snow. At this time, Luu and Loludus also saw the hidden wound of the white wolf. Shocked. There were obvious burn marks from the hind legs to the abdomen, and the scorched flesh hung on the body like this, undulating with its breathing. The bones of the hind legs are exposed. I don't know what weapons or props were used to gouge out a piece of the white wolf's flesh here. Just like this, the white wolf was able to restrain the pain just now, trying his best to slowly pace out as if nothing had happened. There were several slashes, all of which were concentrated on the front half of the white wolf. According to the hunting action of the white wolf, it is conceivable that the person who attacked it has tasted the treatment of its sharp claws cutting flesh and blood. Because of the cold weather, most of the wounds were covered with blood and solidified. But near the chest and abdomen where the wound is relatively large, blood is still dripping. The white wolf coughed violently, and an iron piece was spit out by it. There was still a piece of torn cloth tape stuck to the iron piece, and the pattern on it looked like a falcon that was about to fly. The moment Lulutus saw the iron pieces, she hesitated for a while, and then judged, the iron pieces it spits out seem to be the armor pieces of the standard steel armor. What about the pattern? Like a family emblem. So it is, this is a winter hunt. What do you mean? Luu asked. As the name suggests, heavy snow seals the mountains, and the severe cold forces most of the monsters and beasts to sleep in their dens before starting their hunting activities. It's often the powerful and rich nobles who hold this kind of event. They will drive some livestock into the predetermined hunting area, and use the livestock as bait to activate the beasts and monsters that are not completely asleep. After the beasts have had a full meal, these nobles will attack and kill the beasts during the period when the beasts are full and their mobility is weakened. This is a way of putting gold on one's face and showing strength. If the hunt is successful, they will often preach to the outside world how brave their master is, killing beasts or monsters alone. If there is a scheming, it will spread rumors of monsters raging in the area around the winter hunting beforehand. When people are in panic, they will use the winter hunting to win the hearts of the people. Luu looked around nervously. What a joke! At this juncture, neither he nor Lulutus have finished language learning, and the language module is being loaded. Moreover, the look of Lulutus is basically an attack when someone sees her first. Lulutus obviously thought of this, and Luu was about to leave. However, after drifting out for a while, Luu suddenly asked Lulutus to return. Go back. Yes, go back. If I run into a group of people, I'm not sure how to deal with it. Lulutus said hurriedly. I don't think we'll meet a group of people. The white wolf was seriously injured. With his physical strength, he couldn't escape a long distance. That is to say, the place where the white wolf and the group of people fought is very close to where the cattle were preyed on. At such a close distance, the white wolf escaped with serious injuries, but no one came after him, don't you think? Lulutus followed Luu's train of thought and said in amazement, destroy all. It may also be a serious injury, unable to move. Luu said, this possibility can also be inferred from another way of thinking. If you were planning to trap a certain monster and released your own bait, would you stay far away from these bait? Lulutus thought quickly. This is just speculation, in case. Lulutus, we have run out of food, and the weather will only get colder and colder in the future. Snow will cover up a lot of areas, making our search for food less efficient. Food shortage is not the most serious problem. Have you ever thought that if there are still living people in that group, after they recover, they will most likely invite their friends to search the nearby area? We left too many traces on the place where the white wolf fell. People with a little experience can detect something wrong. Once their brains are hot and they track us. Lulutus was once again persuaded by Luu. She found that Luu's analysis and decision always made her change her mind, who didn't want to express her approval. The white wolf was already dying, and the wound was frozen and no longer bleeding. However, after the battle, the loss of physical strength and the drag from the injury caused its physical condition to deteriorate rapidly. Feeling that life is passing little by little, it no longer struggles, but stares at the sky with wide eyes. Facing Luu and Lulutus who had returned again, Bai Lang just glanced at it and closed his eyes as if resigning his fate. We can help you heal. Bai Lang's eyes lit up, but then he looked at Luu with doubts. It didn't understand why Luu was a boy, but he made a girlish voice. Don't look at him, look at me, the black mist next to you is the one talking to you. Loludus's spiritual magic was not used smoothly. Although the white wolf was seriously injured and dying, its strong willpower was still subconsciously resisting the invasion of foreign forces. If it weren't for White Wolf being so weak, she wouldn't even be able to create opportunities for communication. Luu by my side, you should have seen him. He is very grateful to you for letting him take the leftovers after hunting. Whether you were out of generosity, contempt, arrogance, or other reasons, he did survive because of your actions, so put down your guard, I will go back and fetch herbs and give you basic treatment. Whether you can survive or not is up to you. Put your tongue out if you agree. Without hesitation, the white wolf stuck out his tongue. Loludus was very fast, and after a while, she brought back a lot of herbs from the tree hole, crushed them with tentacles in front of the white wolf, and kneaded them together. The weather is cold, and the white wolf's wound will not rot, so all Loludus has to do is to let it regain its strength. A few pills put down his mouth, and the painful expression of the white wolf was relieved. Luu knew very well that this was just a powerful force of psychological suggestion. After all, those herbs couldn't be effective so quickly. Luu gave Loludus a wink. Are the people who fought with you still alive? Loludus asked. If you have, stick your tongue out, if not, flick your tail. The white wolf's tail flicked slightly. Loludus looked at Luu, wondering what to do. Let him give a specific location, and we'll have a look. Whether it's dead or alive, we have to confirm it with our own eyes. Luu didn't dare to let his guard down on this kind of thing. As long as there is a living mouth, it is possible to bring endless trouble to oneself. After confirming the location and about to set off, Luu stopped Loludus. Later, if there is an unexpected situation, I hope you can accept the decision I made. Loludus was stunned for a while, then asked with a smile, it seems that I have never opposed you for so long, have I? Luu didn't answer. He walked in the direction where the cattle were hunted, and after turning over a small slope, Luu saw a slightly flat area, which was also one of the few open areas in the forest. Surrounded by silver, there is blood red here. The traces of blood jets hung directly on the bare trees next to them. Because the temperature was too low, the blood dripping along the ice edges on the branches congealed in the middle. There was a landscape painting on the ground, with a lot of blood splashing, as if someone was holding a brush dipped in red ink and splashing ink here. The smell of blood penetrated into Luu's nostrils. It was different from the smell of blood of those small animals when he was hunting. It was really fishy. Loludus was disconnected from the spiritual magic she kept at all times. The black fog seemed to be unable to endure the severe cold and was completely frozen, no longer overflowing and surging. The tentacles also maintained a strange posture and froze in midair. Luu was not surprised that she would have such a reaction. The attacked white wolf was besieged by a team of about 10 people. Under the crisis of life and death, it erupted with terrifying combat power. The pieces of armor worn on the bodies of the 2 corpses that fell under the tree, and bloody, were scattered on the ground. Their chests were sunken, and it was not difficult to guess that these 2 warriors faced the extremely ferocious claws of the white wolf. The armor shielded them from cuts that were enough to shatter him, at least proving that the craftsmen who made the armor were reliable. They should be grateful to the craftsmen, because most of the others present did not leave intact bodies. The body parts of the rest of the people were scattered everywhere on this empty flat ground, and the blood and flesh were mixed together and stuck to the snow. Luu's stomach is not good. Most people will feel physically uncomfortable when they see such a picture for the first time. Before he crossed over, he was just an ordinary person, and he couldn't be as calm as water. At this moment, I can resist walking in it, all for the sake of my own life. Loludus, look around to see if anyone is alive. Feeling that Loludus had regained the connection, Luu ordered in a cold tone. This is the time to be tough. Oh. It was the first time that Loludus heard Luu communicate with her in such a cold and stern tone. Liu found many sacks around the 5 cows who were killed by the fighting. When he opened it, he saw that it contained rice that was somewhat different from what he had imagined. Opened another one, and the inside was frozen hard, like naan, and like food for cooking cakes. These 2 foods made Liu, who had a sullen face, in a good mood, and even forgot that he was in a sea of blood. Liu. Loluda's voice made Liu get up quickly and run to her side. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. On the snow, the 2 dying people were dragged out by Loluda's tentacles. The red-haired middle-aged man's armor had strange patterns on it, and from time to time a light blue shimmer flashed. The one with flaxen hair was similar to the other dead people, only wearing ordinary armor. Both were seriously injured. The red-haired middle-aged man had one leg torn off. The pain and hypothermia made him shiver at the moment. The flax hair with no visible scars on the surface has only been out of breath, but it looks like it's an internal injury. When the red-haired man saw Liu, he seemed to grab a life-saving straw, and struggled to grab Liu's hand. The power of survival prompted him to say something very fast, but Liu could only understand a few words. He said that he is the eldest son of Earl Not of Yas Kingdom. If we save him, he is willing to reward us heavily. It's no wonder that this guy has a mithril armor enchanted by at least a 4th-order magician. It seems that no matter where the noble children live, they are very prosperous. Loludus is very contemptuous of noble children. The cold wind hit, rolling up countless snow, and lost Liu's eyes. Liu took a deep breath. Loludus, help me bind his hands and feet. With that said, Liu took out the knife from his backpack that helped him divide the food countless times after he traveled to this world. Loludus noticed something. Remember what I said before you came. If there is an unexpected situation, it's up to you. Loludus repeated. Liu looked at the son of the Earl who was on the ground, who stepped back in horror, trying to escape. He was an accident. He said that there is a secret post he left nearby, and that there is his logistics team not far away. We will definitely not end well if we attack him. Liu watched coldly as Earl Not's eldest son crawled backwards in embarrassment with a broken leg. However, his injuries were very serious, and the weather was very cold, but after crawling out a certain distance, his hands were completely stiff, and his speed became slower and slower. Really, I don't believe it. Liu specially checked, and the food reserves in the sacks can only feed these people for half a month. They even brought a lot of seasonings to enrich the taste of the food. This shows that the group's original plan was to stay in this area for more than half a month and return before the heavy snow completely blocked the forest. The terrain here is complex, and it is impossible to arrive by normal means of transportation. These cows have a high probability of undertaking the transportation work. Judging from the number of people in this group, there should be no special assistance from the logistics team. At most, there are a few people waiting for letters in the outer area of the woodland. The count's son was killed, and the attendants were in crisis. Even if there were 1 or 2 sentinels in charge of guarding, they should have come to help after hearing the movement. Even if he was greedy for life and feared death, after the white wolf left, the dark whistle would come forward to confirm everyone's situation. However, Liu didn't see any corresponding traces around. Liu didn't want to do this, but he didn't want to take the risk. From the moment he met the white wolf, his options were very small. It is impossible to confirm whether the person who fought against the white wolf is still alive, and whether there is a magician who can track magic in this group of people. Aristocrats go hunting in winter. The high EQ argument is to hunt monsters to benefit the common people, while the low EQ argument is to show off. Xiuoxiu was smashed by an ordinary person, and in the deep mountains and forests. Liu didn't dare to gamble on the curiosity and conscience of this group of people. Judging from the content of popular science that Loludus gave him during this time, it is best not to have too high moral expectations for some nobles. The only thing Liu can do is to confirm the results of the White Wolf's battle. The best result is that when they came here, everyone died. But unfortunately, someone is still alive. Although he didn't come here, there is a high probability that the two of them would freeze to death, but since he saw it, Luu had to advance the result of death. A pitch-black shadow flashed across Luu's field of vision, and when he regained his senses, the only leg of Earl Not's eldest son was tightly entangled by Loludus' tentacles. "Let me do it." Luu looked at Loludus in amazement. The sharp tentacles pierced the Earl's eldest son's throat, and he struggled desperately, clutching his throat in pain. Loludus had dealt with many nobles before, and the brains of most noble children were basically brand new. This is probably the case with the eldest son of the Earl in front of him. In his opinion, winter hunting is an entertainment session. It is estimated that they have played countless times before and never had an accident. If it wasn't for the appearance of an uninvited guest like the white wolf that surpassed their realm of strength, they would be able to hunt comfortably, and after half a month, they would withdraw from here and brag about their ability with the prey they got. But this is the way things are in the world. You like to look for excitement, and you also want to meet you unexpectedly. Loludus didn't look at him again, but turned to face Luu. "You forgot, I'm a seventh-order magician. You said that I was a flower that grew up in a greenhouse. I admit it, but a magician without actual combat experience can't reach the 7th level. Have you killed someone before?" Luu asked. "No, but I helped a friend." Loludus was silent for a while, then corrected, "A princess suppressed the riot. So it's our first time." Luu leaned down, aimed the dagger at the flax-haired man's heart, and stabbed him hard, ending his pain. "You said, they were an accident. You also said that in the process of sending me home, it is best to trust your judgment when dealing with emergencies and details. I won't be a drag and I won't interfere with my partner's decision." Luu closed the eyes of the flax-haired man with his hands, glanced at the eldest son of the Earl who was no longer struggling in the distance, and let out a long sigh. At that moment, a lot of things flashed in his mind in a mess. At the moment when the memory of struggling to survive for a month flooded into his mind, he calmed down. If he can't adapt to this environment and make careful and correct decisions, he will only face more and more troubles on this journey. Since you have to face it, you have to be more decisive. You will be a good teammate. You too. Without having to deal with the corpse, Loludus already felt that there were monsters and beasts approaching. This place will soon become a hunting ground for food, so Luu and Loludus quickly found the sacks with rice and moved them all away. As for those hard pancakes, they really don't have the strength to carry them. Considering that this group of monsters shouldn't eat such a vegetarian thing, maybe they can come back for recycling later? The white wolf got better after eating the herbs prepared by Loludus. At this time, he had the strength to change into a prone position instead of lying on his side. Seeing the two people rushing towards him as if they were fleeing with a pile of things on their shoulders, Bai Lang panicked and stood up with a weak body. "Hurry up, there are more and more guys attending the party," Loludus warned. The white wolf turned his head and glanced at the direction Luu was coming back from, where the whistling continued. "A new round of battle has begun." White Wolf looked at the backs of Luu and the two leaving, and silently recorded their breath. He didn't dare to neglect, and then dragged his injured body to run. Loludus walked halfway and threw a few large sacks tied with tentacles on the ground. Luu thought that Loludus had no strength. He was so tired that he didn't speak. He ran over to pick up the sack with rice and help him share some. "Let's put it here first, and I'll go and bring that cow back." It turns out that not only Luu was thinking about those few cows, but Loludus too. It's no wonder that the two of them had eaten slime for half a month before, and the grassy smell in their mouths had not dissipated. If they hadn't eaten some wolf meat, they would have collapsed. "I finally saw a whole cow, how could I let this go?" Back in the tree hole, Luu immediately checked the 2 bags containing seasonings. "Good guy, these noble children really enjoy it. Salt, sugar, pepper, chili powder, oil, soy sauce are all available. Although the smell of soy sauce is a little inferior, and the chili powder is seriously damp, Luu is not picky at all. At this moment, he just wanted to cry and say something. Thank you for the courier. Luu and Loludus moved back and forth several times before they moved the 2 cows and a few bags of rice into the tree hole. Of course, Loludus didn't bring the bull's head back, because it was too late. Luu naturally wouldn't pierce Loludus's words. After all, he also discovered a very important thing. He doesn't have a cauldron that can cook a bull's head. According to Loludus' description, when she went back to pick up beef, the group of monsters and beasts were still frantically filming for food. It's a pity that the rest of the cows can't be recovered, Loludus said. It's a pity that it's too late to check what good things are on the group of people. I hope the group of guys who throw the party won't swallow the valuables whole. Luu was thinking about when to go back and try their luck. After all, after the winter passed, they had to find a nearby town to temporarily settle down, which would require a lot of money. Because she had been using mental magic today, Loludus grabbed the core of a staff to recover as soon as she came back. Luu rubbed his hands together excitedly. Fresh beef, and chili powder, pepper to use, that's too easy for dinner tonight. The rinse is over. Luu put the thawed beef slices neatly in the lunchbox. The water is already boiling, making a puff sound. Uu reading www.uugonshu.com. The greedy Luu couldn't hold back and wanted to start rinsing, but when he saw that Loludus was still recovering, he endured it. I don't know how long ago, when Loludus's thoughts returned to reality, he saw Luu holding a branch and practicing calligraphy on the ground. The characters are still crooked, which is very ugly, but it is much more beautiful than when I first started learning. The water had been boiled for half of the pot. Loludus looked at the lunch box, and the beef on the wooden sign was stunned for a while. Have you eaten yet? Luu, who was concentrating on practicing calligraphy, was shocked when he saw that Loludus had recovered, and quickly replied, Isn't this waiting for you? Loludus' smiling laughter resounded in Luu's mind. Why are you laughing? No, it's nothing, let's eat. Loludus' tentacles rolled up a piece of beef and was about to rinse it in the pot. Luu's chopsticks mercilessly hit it. What's wrong? Loludus was stunned. Don't poke the tentacles into the hot pot. Luu warned. I don't feel hot. But I'm also going to cook in this pot to eat. Pay attention to hygiene. Loludus argued aggrievedly, this body looks pitch black, but it's not dirty at all, okay? My tentacles are clean. Besides, I really can't use your weird cutlery. How can my tentacles handle 2 small wooden sticks? Luu stared at Loludus' tentacles, then raised his head and glanced at Loludus. Then don't wash it. Loludus was about to fry her hair when Luu said again. I'll help you cook, you're responsible for eating, as long as you don't poke your tentacles into the pot, can't I feed you? It is no longer necessary to eat sticky slimes, and there is a high probability that you will not have to think about food storage for a while in the future. This sense of security makes beef extra delicious. Luu naturally couldn't feed Loludus by hand. After he rinsed it, he picked up the beef with chopsticks and asked Loludus to reach for it. After all, he couldn't find where Loludus' mouth was. Loludus was not interested in the damp chili powder, and the beef slices dipped in salt and ate them quickly. It was agreed to eat together, but Luu just had time to eat his own after feeding Loludus. Speaking of which, your home was blown up and you disappeared. Wouldn't your friends try to find you? Luu, who had been thinking about escorting Loludus home for a while, remembered this. The tree hole suddenly became quiet, and the wind blowing in along the gap of the baffle tried hard to dispel the pervading silence. No one will come to me. Luu, who realized that his problem might have stepped on thunder, even had a smaller range of chewing. Investigating the topic of why no one is looking for Loludus will only make the awkward atmosphere continue, and he is eager to find a new topic. Although the two have been together for more than half a month, both of them are very cautious not to explore each other's past. Luu didn't intend to break this tacit understanding. That's how we get along with each other. People who want to say it will naturally say it. If they don't want to, you will only appear to be very gossipy if you ask questions. I have some problems with my background, so my popularity is not very good, so no one will care about what happened to me. Perhaps it was what happened today that both parties confirmed that the other was a qualified companion. Unexpectedly, Loludus continued the topic. Faced with this thread that was obviously thrown by Loludus to push him forward, Luu did not hesitate. Not a single one. Not a single one. After hesitating for a while, Loludus added, there was one before. That princess. Luu clearly remembered that Loludus helped one person suppress the riot. Well, it's her, but we won't be friends after that. She used me to suppress the riots for her and gain the capital to seize power. I hate to be involved in the struggle by her friendship, so I left the capital as a citizen of the empire, and went to the wilderness alone to build my own mansion. Luu, you said that after taking me home, if you can't make it through the path of being a magician and want to eat and die under my protection, it's not too late to change this requirement. Loludus suddenly laughed. My house is not fun at all, and it is very deserted. After returning home, it will probably be rebuilt. Of course, if your requirements are very low, you still have basic living guarantees. After all, a 7th-order magician can go out and get some extra money from time to time. Before Loludus said that she was not the eldest Miss Luu, she didn't quite believe it. After all, she was a person with low experience and high achievements, who was out of touch with reality in the details of life. But the house was bombed and no one came to look for her, and she also said that there was something wrong with her background, so Luu had to make Loludus suspect the family members of Loludus. Luu took a mouthful of beef and said indifferently, I won't change it. You sure? I crossed over here and played survival games with a group of small animals for a whole month, and my psychological expectations were already very low. If I don't have any achievements in magic, then I will definitely need a lot of time to study my way out, and your protection is still essential. This is the retreat I chose for myself, and I won't change it. Loludus' tentacle lightly pressed against Luu's forehead, but he subconsciously pushed it away. I remember very clearly. You just used these 2 tentacles to grab meat and eat it. Have you washed your hands? Loludus wanted to fulfill an ineffective promise ahead of time with the etiquette of a magician signing a contract, to show that he paid attention to Luu's requirements. She also thought about it, and after unlocking some of the sealed contracts on her body, she immediately concluded a formal contract with Luu. Luu's group, combined with what he said, immediately shattered the atmosphere that Loludus had created. Loludus felt angry at the thought of her desire to take this guy so seriously. She gritted her teeth and said, Wash, I'll go out and rub snowflakes, hum. Luu didn't understand what Loludus was humming. Even if you wash your hands, you need to be angry? He could understand that tentacles came over and planned to enter the study time. After all, it was indeed time for the two to do homework for each other. But you have to wash your hands first. Is it polite to touch your head with the tentacles that have grabbed meat and touched oil? Do you know how torturous it is to take a shower in such a cold weather, and how much courage it takes? Luu and Loludus spent almost a month in the tree hole to supervise each other and speed up the loading of language modules. During this period, Luu and Loludus once again returned to the place where the Count's eldest son was wiped out. The monsters and beasts who had the party cleaned the place so cleanly that even the bones were caught elsewhere. Loludus said that in this case, even experienced magicians and adventurers would be unable to find out any useful information. The rivalry of monsters and beasts destroyed all traces, and even the evidence of the existence of this group of people in this world was also annihilated. All the food that was too late to take away disappeared, and the cow was eaten with only some skeletons left. At first, Luu thought it was too plain and too hard, and the non that no monsters could eat disappeared. Regarding Luu's idea, Loludus kindly told him that not only slimes are omnivorous creatures. Fortunately, there are no omnivorous monsters in this area that like to devour gold and iron, and the swords and armors of the place are completely preserved. After searching, Luu happily plucked a topaz from the hilt of a sword for decoration with the help of Loludus, which was considered a small fortune. As for the mithril armor, which obviously sold for a good price, Luu didn't take it. Loludus wondered why Luu, who had been planning expenses all the time, was thinking about travel expenses and let go of this valuable item. This topaz, no matter where it is exchanged, I can say that it was obtained by accident. A pair of mithril armor doesn't fit my body size, and I'm not a magician who can enchant, but I carry it with me and sell it everywhere. The Earl's eldest son just died, and I thought about it intentionally or not. No matter how I explain it, I can't escape suspicion. Let it stay there. The battle marks on the armor will tell anyone who finds him that the eldest son of the Earl died at the hands of monsters. What kind of ability do you have, what kind of money you make, money that is beyond your ability, even if you get it, you may not be able to keep it, and you may even invite disaster. Before you and I have enough strength to deal with external crises, we must seek a word of stability. Luu stated his creed. The weather is getting colder and colder, and the monsters that lack food will naturally become more active. Luu, who had made steady progress to the end, returned to the tree hole and arranged the collected branches again, expanding the alert range again. The language module was loaded at the most critical moment, and both Luu and Loludus began to sprint the grammar link. The daily routine in the tree hole is that two people practice oral language awkwardly and rigidly. One speaks blunt Esperanto, and the other speaks Chinese with a strange accent. The scene where the two stand and talk together is called a chicken and duck talking. Loludus felt that the Esperanto spoken by Luu was as flat as a road run over by a carriage, and there was no fluctuation in the tone, no matter how you heard it, it was the same tone. Luu felt that Loludus's Chinese would never be flat and she had as many problems as herself. But they both quickly realized one thing after laughing at each other. Although it is very awkward, but at least I can understand it, I can hear it clearly. After learning Loludus's so-called Esperanto, Luu discovered a lot of wonderful misunderstandings in pronunciation, and these misunderstandings have also become his and Loludus encrypted passwords. Just when Loludus was about to explain the meaning of the words again and again, a crisp pop alarmed the two of them. Luu immediately looked at the burning branches in the bonfire, while Loludus immediately floated to the baffle of the tree hole and looked out. The blue eyes lit up in the darkness, and with the dim light in his eyes, the uninvited guest got closer and closer to the tree hole. The branches buried under the snow made a crisp sound one after another, warning Luu that he was approaching dangerously. Luu, who came to the edge of the baffle, naturally saw this scene, but he and Loludus were not afraid, just a little surprised. Uu reading www.uugonshu.com. The white wolf was holding a slime whose juice had been drained and its body was shriveled, and slowly walked to the entrance of the tree hole. This unfortunate slime has been slapped by the white wolf and is about to be split in two, and the soft body tissue inside is also covered with a layer of ice ballast in the cold weather. The white wolf put the slime on the ground, pushed it towards the tree hole with its claws, leaned down slightly, and stared straight at the hole with its huge eyes. Luu wanted to see Loludus' expression, but Loludus had no face. Let's go out and have a look. They're all here with slimes in their mouths. It can't be tempting us to go out and eat them. Luu said, the two of us are not enough for him to hunt slimes. Tonight, the wind was howling and he walked out of the tree hole. Snow Dianza slapped Luu's face in pain. Seeing Luu walk out, the white wolf pushed the slime hard with its mouth and let it slide in front of the two of them. Loludus turned over the slime with her tentacles and said, another unlucky jungle slime. There was a grassy smell in Luu's mouth for no reason. Who eats slime when there is beef? But the white wolf was obviously here to thank them for their kindness for the treatment. He finally found a slime. If he didn't accept it, the white wolf would have to find other strange things desperately. When the time comes, it won't necessarily be a slime who looks so friendly. And the white wolf might get hurt again. It is rare that there is a creature who shows kindness to them in this desolate mountain forest. Because the misunderstanding will put the other party in deep danger, Luu and Luludus feel that it is inappropriate. Got it, now there are seasonings, maybe I can make the slime a little better? Having suffered such a serious injury more than a month ago, neither Luu nor Luludus are optimistic that the white wolf can survive. However, the beast's self-healing ability is really strong, and the white wolf not only survived, but is still alive and well. This time, White Wolf seemed to want to send a slime to the two of them. Seeing Luludus dragging the slime into the tree hole, he left without looking back. In the future, the White Wolf will come to the tree hole every few minutes. It seemed that they didn't like slimes. The White Wolf didn't bother the unlucky slimes anymore, but picked up a lot of frozen animals, which was considered a change of taste for Luu and the others. The White Wolf was unusually silent, and only made eye contact with Luu and Luludus. Every time he put down his prey, he left quickly. However, when Luu went out one day, he saw a white wolf lying in ambush under a snowy hill not far away. After looking at Luu for a few seconds, Bai Lang shook the snow on his body and silently got up and left. Thinking about it carefully, there has never been any threatening monster near the tree hole, probably because of the white wolf that is always active around here. From the first snow, Luu would write down the traces of winter in the tree hole every day, and now there are 16 orthographic characters on the wall of the tree hole. Luu and Luludus, who worked hard day and night to load language modules, finally got results before the snow melted. Even though the grammar is still a bit awkward, what Luu says most of the time can be understood. Compared to speaking and writing, Luu is better at listening. Luludus tested his hearing, and Luu never missed, which also made him more confident about contacting people in the future. At the same time, Luu knew why Luludus could become a 7th-order magician at such a young age. Her learning ability is really strong. At first, Luu could laugh at her chubby handwriting, which was not square at all. With the advancement of learning, Luludus's words became more and more standard, and even Luu felt that his own words might not be as good-looking as Luludus. I really can't imitate your handwriting. Isn't it ugly for me to write like this? Luludus' words are a good sentence to break the defense. Strictly speaking, Luu's words written on a tree branch will be criticized if the language teacher sees them. But the words that Luludus wrote with her tentacles have the charm of having learned calligraphy. Hearing that Luludus was planning to move closer to his handwriting, Luu tried his best to stop it. He was really embarrassed to say the reason, he could only learn about the meaning of calligraphy, and complimented Luludus, calming Luludus' motivated heart. I don't know when, the snow stopped falling, and the white that spread all over the earth gradually faded away, replaced by those inconspicuous green stubbornly emerging from the ground. The cold winter, which made everything wither, has come to an end, and the crisp birdsong in the mountains and forests is getting more and more. A group of birds stopped on the branch that had just sprouted and chatted non-stop. The white wolf, who was lying under the tree and guarding the tree hole, squinted for a while, bowed slightly, and jumped high without warning. In the next second, the birds that came to announce the spring came to travel in his belly. The guys who disturbed the tranquility were gone, and the white wolf dozed off contentedly. Luu, who returned from the tree hole, told Luludus that the frozen river had begun to flow. Although the weather was still cold, spring was indeed embracing the land and giving them life. Luu and Luludus began to prepare for leaving here. The first is the collected potion. Luludus was classified according to rarity and preservation, and some of them were taken out. The remaining part was limited by magic, and Luludus had no way to extract the essence, so he could only crush it with rough methods, stir it together, and make pills with inferior effects. Loludus didn't forget the white wolf who silently guarded them this winter. Some of the pills to treat the wounds were packed by her with cloth, and they were handed over to the white wolf when they left. Luu once again counted the possessions at his disposal. A topaz dug from the hilt of a sword. The 3 silver coins promised by the owner of the suicide note, Naka. Some inferior pills. 7 rare medicinal materials, the price is unknown. According to Loludus' teaching in the past 3 months, he made a rough estimate that it should be possible to replace a nice house. Of course, this is the price in the surrounding area that Loludus knows. Right now, they don't know what mainstream currency is used in their region and the flow of resources. Therefore, Luu was also prepared that the things he held were far from his psychological expectations. Loludus's appearance is unsightly. For this reason, Luu originally planned to empty his backpack a little bit and let her sneak in and hide. But he had an idea and found the white wolf who was silently protecting them. He held his backpack, and communicated with gestures and blunt words. Bai Lang stared at him for a long time, motionless, with an expression like he was looking at a fool. When Luu was about to wonder if he was pulling his hips to the point where he couldn't understand the spoken language, Bai Lang slowly got up, went up and down a few times, and disappeared from sight. After a while, the white wolf took back a slightly damaged backpack made of animal leather. It turns out that you can understand it, so why don't you express it? Luu hurriedly asked Loludus to get in and try it out. The size was just right to hold it, perfect. After solving the problem of Loludus hiding, Luu began to introduce the script he prepared to her, and asked her to find faults and fill in the gaps. The character Luu designed for himself is a traveler who has crossed many regions and is tirelessly moving forward in order to understand how big the world is. Such a character can effectively explain why Luu's accent is so peculiar, and at the same time, it can cut off the source of his own information. After all, it is simply impossible to know the details of a traveler from a place unknown to most people. Loludus once said that in this continent, and even in this world, there are many active travelers who draw regional maps while traveling. Every time these people go to a new area, they are often warmly welcomed by the local authorities, and the maps in their hands are also extremely rare treasures, attracting countless people to copy them. The Adventurers Guild will even give the greatest help to these warriors who have come from afar. Originally thought her proposal was perfect, but Loludus quickly gave Luu an opinion after reading it. Let's add a setting. Apart from the traveler, you are still a noble in the place where you were born. What? Trust me, in the name of an aristocrat, you will get more preferential treatment, and you won't even be troubled most of the time. Loludus said quietly, "This is my experience." Luu pondered for a while, wondering if it could be. It's not a big problem to add a noble character, it's just, I don't know what a noble is like, I can't act like that. You can learn. Speaking of which, Luu had to change the script. Travelers, nobles, knowledgeable and knowledgeable, know a lot of knowledge that others don't know. Originally the main label was approachable, but now the approachable can only be placed in the back row. In order to comply with these settings, the 2 labels, mysterious and unknown, were selected by Luu. At the same time, in order to meet these labels, Luu must learn magic quickly after finding a foothold, or help Loludus to lift some basic seals so that she can be free. Otherwise, it would not be easy at all to rely on him to support this lie and maintain these labels. Just as Luu continued to perfect the script in his mind, Loludus suddenly came over and asked curiously, "I just thought of something." Luu raised his head. There is a category of magicians called summoners. They can summon summoned objects that serve him for a short period of time in the form of contracts. The summoner pays the corresponding price, and the summoned object meets the requirements of the summoner. Reading www.yuugonshu.com. The summoning of summons is based on the summoner's emotional fluctuations and personal needs, and the posture of their arrival in this world is often biased towards the image presented in your mind. Luu was a little confused by what Lulutus said, and after a little reasoning, he said, "Speak English. For example, I want to summon a summoned creature to help me clean up, and then I outline the image of a cat in my mind, and then superimpose it on a person. Then the ones who are summoned are usually the Katard people or pure-blooded cat people." At the academic meeting of the Magicians Association 1100 years ago, a senior put forward a very famous conjecture in the magic circle. The plot of the spirit body of the summoning ceremony is based on everyone's cognition, and the things summoned by the summoner basically cannot escape their cognition of the world. So the world's response to this is also calling out something similar to what is in the world. If someone can imagine a thing that doesn't exist in this world at all, what form will this thing come in? This is the fantasy life theory, also known as the summoner's cognitive breakthrough conjecture. 2 round white spots of light in the center of the black mist of Lulutus disappeared in a flash. Could this be the hidden eyes of Lulutus' body? Luu was shocked. But what surprised Luu even more was what Lulutus said afterward. "Luu, you are not from this world, so naturally you have a different cognition from people in this world. If you are a summoner and use your cognition to describe summoned objects, then what would come to this world in response to your contract, what would it be?